Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're not chasing battles, emperors, or dramatic moments in history. Tonight, we're doing something far more unusual. We're drifting slowly through time, across ancient temples, quiet stone homes, forgotten mines, and sleeping cities, listening to wood age, walls breathe, and warmth settle into the night. This is the entire history of architecture, daily life, and sleep, told in the calmest, most intentionally boring way possible. From Japanese wooden joints that survived 1,000 winters, to silent cosmic events recorded only by trees, to miners working in darkness, and finally, to ancient Greek homes where people learned how to sleep without freezing. A bedtime story built from patience, repetition, and quiet details that most history books rush past. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, slow your breathing, and let history fade softly into rest. Welcome back. And before we begin, allow your eyes to gently close. Tonight, there will be no warriors, no emperors, no dramatic fires or falling empires. Instead, we will travel into something far quieter, far slower, and far more enduring: wood. For the next hour, we will speak softly about beams, joints, fibers, and the patient hands that shaped them. This is the sleep history of Japanese architecture, told not through noise, but through grain. Long before stone defined power in the West, Japanese architecture history unfolded in timber, chosen not for dominance, but for harmony. Each piece of wood breathed, expanded, contracted, and aged alongside the people who lived beneath it. This boring history is not boring to the body. It is calming, repetitive, and deeply human. As you listen, imagine a slow visual ASMR close-up of wood fibers under lantern light, the surface worn smooth by centuries of invisible touch. At Horyuji, one of the oldest surviving wooden complexes in the world, builders selected timber with an almost meditative attention, not rushing, not forcing, but listening. Cypress whispered stability. Cedar offered warmth. Pine carried quiet resilience. Japanese architecture history is inseparable from this listening. The builders understood that wood remembers, that every beam carries the memory of rain, sun, wind, and time. In this sleep story for adults, we linger on those memories. The joints, never nailed, never hurried, slid together in silence, forming connections so precise they needed no words. Mortise and tenon joints became conversations between surfaces, each groove shaped to accept the other, creating balance without resistance. This is why boring history soothes the nervous system: repetition without conflict, structure without aggression. Tatami mats, measured not by rulers but by bodies, defined space according to human rest rather than conquest. Rooms expanded or contracted gently, following modular rhythms that allowed the architecture to breathe. In this sleep history, there is no climax, only continuation. The wood aged slowly, darkening, absorbing incense smoke, footsteps, seasons. Japanese architecture history does not shout its presence, it waits. And as you listen, let your breath slow, matching the tempo of carpenters planing wood at dawn, stroke after stroke, identical yet never rushed. Each temple beam carries the quiet labor of generations who understood that buildings were not objects but companions. This is why even now, centuries later, standing beneath those beams feels like standing inside a long exhale. The boring history of Japanese architecture is not meant to impress you, it is meant to hold you. Let the idea settle that nothing here needs to change quickly. The grain runs straight, then curves, then straightens again, just like breathing. In this sleep story for adults, architecture becomes rest. The world narrows to texture, weight, and balance. As we continue, we will move deeper into the wood itself. But for now, remain here, listening to the soundless patience of timber, still standing, still waiting, still doing exactly what it was shaped to do.
As your breathing slows, we move closer, not outward, deeper into the silent logic that holds Japanese architecture together. If part 1 was about wood as a living presence, this part is about how that presence learns to rest within itself. Japanese architecture history reveals that the true strength of timber was never in its mass, but in how it was allowed to meet other pieces of wood. In a slow visual ASMR moment, imagine ancient hands hovering before contact, measuring not with tools but with memory. Mortise slides into tenon, tongue into groove, shoulder into socket. Each joint is designed to stop precisely where it should, not sooner, not later. This is boring history at its most hypnotic, because nothing dramatic happens, and yet everything holds. No nails interrupt the conversation, no metal insists on permanence. Instead, wood accepts movement, earthquakes, humidity, centuries. This is sleep history shaped by patience rather than force. In temples like Horyuji, joints were named not to impress, but to clarify intention. Scarf joints for length, dovetails for tension, hidden locks for weight. Japanese architecture history treats structure like breath control, always allowing a little give. And as you listen, allow your own muscles to loosen in response. The builders knew that rigidity breaks while flexibility endures. Tatami mats now return quietly into focus, not as decoration, but as an invisible measuring system that organized life itself. A room was not defined by walls, but how many bodies could rest comfortably within it. Tatami dictated where you slept, where you sat, how you moved, how sound traveled. This sleep story for adults drifts through those measurements slowly. Standardized over centuries, yet never rigid, tatami created modular calm. Rooms expanded by adding mats, contracted by removing them, never disturbing harmony. Japanese architecture history becomes a study in controlled repetition, a rhythm the body understands instinctively. Visual ASMR lingers on the edges of tatami, fraying slightly, darkened by feet, aligned with wooden thresholds polished by years of passing. In boring history, repetition is not dull, it is reassuring. You always know where to step, where to lie down, where silence begins. Even ceilings followed this logic, lowered intentionally to contain warmth and sound, creating intimacy rather than grandeur. In this sleep history, architecture protects rest. Light enters indirectly, filtered through shoji screens, softened until shadows lose their sharpness. Nothing demands attention. Everything invites calm. Japanese architecture history never rushes the eye. It guides it gently downward, inward, slower. Wood grain aligns horizontally to ground the body. Vertical elements are rare and restrained, preventing visual agitation. This is why the architecture feels like an exhale rather than a statement. As you remain here, let the thought settle that boredom, when designed carefully, becomes safety. The predictable rhythm of joints, mats, beams, and screens creates a world where nothing surprises you. And in that absence of surprise, the mind releases its grip. This is the viral secret of boring history for sleep. Not excitement, but permission to stop anticipating. The structure holds itself, so you do not have to.
Now, without changing pace, we arrive at the quiet heart of this chapter, where Japanese architecture history becomes almost indistinguishable from a whispered inventory. Not a list meant to be memorized, but a slow procession meant to be felt. At Horyuji, the wood was never chosen randomly. Each type carried a different responsibility, a different rhythm of aging, a different sound when touched by time. Hinoki cypress formed the spiritual spine, pale and calm, releasing a faint scent even after centuries, a smell that softened the mind before prayer began. Sugi cedar followed, lighter, warmer, absorbing moisture gently, preventing rot not through resistance but through accommodation. Pine appeared where flexibility mattered, its fibers bending rather than snapping when the earth shifted. Japanese architecture history unfolds here not as design theory, but as trust in materials. Oak added weight where patience was required. Zelkova brought quiet strength to thresholds and columns. Camphor guarded against insects with its subtle presence. Each wood entered the structure like a voice joining a choir, never overpowering, never silent. In this boring history for sleep, the naming of woods becomes rhythmic rather than informative. Mulberry, chestnut, cherry, elm, maple, each contributing texture, tone, density. Some darkened quickly, others slowly, creating layers of time visible only to those who waited long enough. This is why Japanese architecture history rewards stillness. The temple was not meant to be understood at once. It revealed itself over decades, even lifetimes. Builders knew exactly where softness was needed and where endurance mattered more. Bamboo appeared not as structure but as companion, guiding movement, filtering sound, marking boundaries without closing them. Paulownia protected storage spaces, light and resistant to fire, chosen not for drama but for foresight. In this sleep story for adults, foresight is calming. Nothing here is urgent, nothing is excessive. Even the act of naming 50 different woods becomes an act of reassurance, proof that every detail was considered so you do not have to consider anything now. Visual ASMR slows to extreme close-ups of grain patterns, each one unique yet familiar, like fingerprints that do not demand identification. Japanese architecture history understands that repetition with variation soothes the mind. No two beams are identical, yet none feel out of place. The temple breathes because its materials breathe at different speeds. Some woods expand eagerly in summer, others resist, creating internal balance without tension. This is boring history as biology, as cooperation, as rest. The builders never rushed completion because completion was never the goal. Maintenance was expected, replacement was accepted, impermanence was built in quietly, without fear. In this sleep history, architecture becomes a living cycle rather than a finished monument. As you listen, allow the idea to settle that nothing here was meant to last forever, only long enough. That acceptance removes pressure. The structure does not cling to permanence, and neither must you. Horyuji still stands not because it was frozen in time, but because it was allowed to change slowly. Wood was replaced when necessary, matched carefully, blended respectfully. Japanese architecture history teaches that continuity does not require sameness, it requires attention. And attention, when gentle, leads naturally to sleep. As this chapter closes, remain with the image of countless wooden names dissolving into texture rather than words. The inventory fades into sensation, weight, warmth, balance. No need to remember which wood was which. The building remembers for you, and in that quiet delegation, the mind rests. Imagine for a moment that you are placing a single brick on the ground. It is not dramatic, it is not urgent, it is simply heavy. Now, imagine placing another brick beside it, aligning the edges carefully, adjusting the angle slightly, and pressing it down until it sits flat. Tonight, we will not speak of battles or invaders. This is not a story of conflict. This is a history documentary for sleep, and our only task is to walk slowly and endlessly along the Great Wall of China. In ancient history, scale was not explained, it was experienced. The wall did not rise all at once. It grew meter by meter, year by year, dynasty by dynasty, until distance itself became the main character. As the wind ambiance moves gently across the open plains, imagine your footsteps matching the rhythm of labor. One step, one brick, one breath. The Great Wall of China history begins not with emperors, but with measurements. Height first, then thickness, then length. Early sections rose only as tall as necessary, often between 5 and 7 meters, just enough to block wind, animals, and passage, nothing more. Thickness mattered more than height, because weight lasts longer than ambition. At the base, the wall widened deliberately, sometimes exceeding 6 meters, allowing it to absorb pressure from time rather than resist it. In this ancient history, endurance replaced speed. Construction schedules were not measured in days, but in seasons. Brick kilns burned steadily nearby, not rushing, maintaining consistent heat, turning raw clay into usable units through repetition alone. Each kiln followed the same cycle: load, heat, wait, cool, repeat. This repetition is where scale fatigue begins. The numbers grow quietly. Hundreds of kilns, thousands of bricks per day, millions over decades. This is boring history by design. No single brick is important, yet the wall cannot exist without all of them. Workers lifted, carried, stacked, adjusted, and moved on, rarely seeing the section they began completed. In this sleep story for adults, we linger on that unfinished feeling. The wall stretched beyond visibility, curving gently with the land, never straight for long. Even walking it in the mind becomes tiring. The distance refuses to resolve. The Great Wall of China history is a study in accumulated effort, not brilliance, not innovation, but persistence. Mud, stone, brick, lime mortar, all chosen for availability rather than beauty. The wind continues to move across the grasslands, erasing footsteps almost as soon as they appear. This history documentary for sleep avoids climax intentionally. We continue walking. The wall rises slightly, then descends, then rises again, following terrain without argument. Each segment repeats the same proportions, the same textures, the same muted colors. Ancient history here does not surprise you. It wears you down gently. As your breathing slows, notice how the mind stops trying to reach the end. The scale is too large. Completion becomes irrelevant. The wall exists because people kept placing bricks, not because they ever finished. And that realization is calming. There is no rush, no finish line, just the steady placement of one more brick, again and again, until thought itself becomes heavy enough to rest.
We continue walking, not faster, not slower, simply continuing, because stopping would require a decision, and decisions take energy. In ancient history, the Great Wall of China history was never about a single workforce, but about layers of labor arriving and leaving across generations. Imagine the sound beneath the wind ambiance, footsteps, steady and unremarkable, blending into the ground. The number of workers was never fixed. Some years counted tens of thousands. Other periods quietly exceeded hundreds of thousands, not gathered at once, but distributed along distances too long to comprehend. This is where scale fatigue deepens. You cannot picture everyone together, so the mind gives up trying. Labor was divided by task, not by glory. Some dug foundations, widening the base to absorb weight. Others mixed lime mortar, combining crushed stone, sand, and sticky rice paste in ratios refined through repetition rather than theory. Brick carriers walked predictable paths, forward and back, their routes worn smooth by feet long before stone ever was. In this history documentary for sleep, repetition replaces drama. Construction seasons stretched across decades. A section built one year was left to weather, settle, crack slightly, and be repaired before the next layer was added. This was not inefficiency, it was adaptation. The Great Wall of China history advanced because time itself was treated as a material. Winter froze progress, summer slowed it, spring resumed it gently. Numbers accumulate quietly here. One dynasty begins work, another continues it, rarely finishing what was started. Centuries overlap without conclusion. In this sleep story for adults, exhaustion is not sudden. It accumulates gradually, like distance underfoot. Records mention years rather than dates, spans rather than moments. Some walls took several lifetimes to reach their intended height, others never did. Yet the work continued anyway. Brick production followed its own endless rhythm. Kilns were built near clay sources, dismantled when depleted, rebuilt elsewhere, repeating the same shapes again and again. Heat was monitored not by instruments, but by color, by smell, by habit. Too hot and bricks cracked, too cool and they weakened. The acceptable range was narrow, and maintaining it required attention without excitement. This is boring history refined into routine. As you walk further, towers appear at regular intervals, not as monuments, but as measurements. Every few hundred meters, the same height, the same footprint, the same internal volume.
Climbing one in the mind is tiring, descending another is the same effort reversed. The Great Wall of China history does not reward curiosity, it neutralizes it. The landscape repeats, the labor repeats, the structure repeats. Even maintenance followed schedules that ignored urgency. Repairs waited for seasons. Cracks were marked, measured, and revisited later. Nothing was rushed. This slow patience is what makes ancient history heavy. As the wind continues across the plains, notice how the idea of completion fades entirely. The wall becomes less an object and more a condition. It exists because work continues, not because an end is visible. In this history documentary for sleep, that realization removes pressure. You are not expected to arrive anywhere. You are only expected to continue gently until the mind grows tired enough to stop asking questions.
At this point, distance itself begins to lose meaning. We have been walking for so long that numbers blur into sensation. And that is exactly where the Great Wall of China history settles the mind. Ancient history here is no longer something you observe. It is something that surrounds you. The wall continues, not dramatically, not suddenly, but steadily, with no visual cue that suggests an ending. Measurements repeat until they no longer feel informative. Height remains consistent, thickness remains reliable, length continues without asking permission. In this history documentary for sleep, statistics soften instead of sharpening attention. Records describe total lengths stretching across thousands of kilometers, including natural barriers linked together by human effort. But the mind stops trying to calculate. 1 kilometer feels the same as the next. 1 decade blends into another. Construction years overlap until they lose individual identity. This is scale fatigue completing its work. Brick by brick, generation by generation, the wall absorbed time rather than marking it. The process of building became indistinguishable from maintenance, and maintenance became indistinguishable from existence. Kilns continued to burn quietly somewhere behind us, somewhere ahead of us, always at a distance that makes them impossible to locate precisely. Workers arrived, aged, and left. New workers replaced them, learning the same motions, carrying the same weight, walking the same paths. In ancient history, this repetition was not failure, it was stability. The wall did not require innovation to continue, it required endurance. Numbers appear in records like soft echoes, millions of tons of material, countless labor days, centuries of intermittent progress. But none of these figures demand attention anymore. They pass through the mind like wind over stone. In this sleep story for adults, exhaustion becomes a form of calm. The body recognizes the pattern and stops resisting it. Towers keep appearing at predictable intervals, their internal dimensions familiar enough to feel already explored. Even the wind ambiance feels unchanged, constant, neutral. The Great Wall of China history reveals its final effect here, not awe, but surrender. There is nothing left to anticipate. No section promises to be different from the last. Repairs blend seamlessly into original work. New bricks match old ones closely enough that the boundary disappears. Ancient history dissolves into continuity. The wall no longer feels built, it feels grown. As you continue this mental walk, notice how the urge to count fades completely. You are no longer tracking distance, labor, or time. You are simply present within something that extends beyond the need for awareness. This history documentary for sleep achieves its purpose not by teaching, but by exhausting the need to know. Completion is irrelevant. The wall does not end in your mind because it never needed to. It exists as a long, unbroken thought, stretching until thought itself grows quiet. And in that quiet, rest arrives naturally. Deep within the ancient oak forests of Gaul, where the ground is soft with moss and the air smells faintly of damp leaves. There is no shouting, no command, no urgency. Only the quiet movement of branches above and the slow whisper of wind moving through bark and canopy. This is where the story of the Celtic Druids begins, not as a written record, but as an atmosphere. The Druids did not carve their teachings into stone, nor did they trust parchment with their thoughts. In this mythology sleep story, we will follow their example and allow knowledge to drift rather than arrive. Celtic history here is not a timeline, it is a feeling that settles gradually, like dusk. The Druids believed that wisdom moved best when carried by memory, by repetition, by listening. And so this Druids documentary for sleep does not rush forward, it lingers. Imagine sitting beneath an oak so old that its roots feel wider than thought itself. Leaves fall occasionally, not enough to interrupt silence, just enough to remind you that time is passing gently. In history to fall asleep to, the absence of written words becomes comforting. Nothing demands attention. Nothing needs to be remembered exactly. The Druids were not priests in the sense of hierarchy. They were listeners, observers, mediators between rhythm and rest. Their forests were classrooms without walls, libraries without shelves. Celtic history unfolded in cycles rather than events. The turning of seasons mattered more than dates. Dawn and dusk were more meaningful than years. In this cozy mystery, secrecy is not threatening, it is protective. Knowledge was whispered so it would never harden into dogma. You can almost hear it now, the soft exchange of voices blending with birdsong, indistinguishable from nature itself. The Druids taught by walking, by standing still, by noticing how light filtered through leaves at different hours. This mythology sleep story is built on that same principle. We do not explain everything. We allow the mind to rest inside suggestion. Oak trees held particular importance, not because of symbolism alone, but because of their endurance. They grew slowly, patiently, and so did understanding. Celtic history becomes something you sit with rather than study. As you breathe in, imagine the forest breathing back. The air is cool, steady, safe. No sudden sounds, only the distant rustle of animals moving without being seen. In this Druids documentary, mystery is gentle. There are no sacrifices here, no dramatic rituals, only quiet presence. The Druids gathered in clearings not to perform, but to align themselves with what already existed. They believed the world spoke constantly, and wisdom came from listening long enough. In history to fall asleep to, listening replaces learning. The forest floor is uneven but familiar. Every step is slow, deliberate, unhurried. Celtic history does not push forward, it circles back, again and again, until the path feels known. As this part of the story settles around you, let your thoughts drift like leaves on still water. Nothing here needs resolution. Nothing here needs proof. The Druids left no texts so that the knowledge would remain alive, flexible, and light enough to carry into sleep.
As the forest grows quieter, you begin to notice that silence itself has layers. The Druids understood this well. In Celtic history, silence was not emptiness, it was instruction. Beneath the canopy, they waited, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, not to receive visions, but to align their breathing with the world around them. This Druids documentary for sleep follows that same rhythm. Nothing happens quickly here. Moss thickens on stone without being noticed. Dew gathers and evaporates without ceremony. In mythology's sleep story traditions, the Druids believed that nature never hurried, and therefore wisdom should not either. Their rituals were not spectacles, they were patterns repeated so gently that the body forgot to anticipate change. Walking slowly between trees, pausing at familiar clearings, touching bark that felt cool even at midday, these were acts of memory rather than belief. Celtic history lived in motion so subtle it felt like stillness. The Druids taught students for years before allowing them to speak publicly, not as a test, but as preparation for patience. Knowledge was considered heavy, and only those who could carry it calmly were trusted with it. In history to fall asleep to, this restraint is deeply comforting. Nothing presses forward. Even time itself seems willing to wait. Moonlight filters through branches, changing shape as clouds drift lazily overhead. The forest does not react, it simply adjusts. In this cozy mystery, the unknown is never threatening. It is familiar, like a path you have walked before in dreams. The Druids marked time not with clocks, but with repetition. The return of birdsong at dawn, the gradual deepening of shadows at dusk, the way fog settles low, then lifts, then returns again. These cycles were lessons in acceptance. Celtic history is less about discovery and more about recognition. You recognize patterns because you have seen them before, even if you cannot say where. In this mythology sleep story, the mind is invited to release the need for explanation. The Druids trusted oral tradition because it changed slightly each time it was spoken, remaining alive. Fixed words, they believed, became brittle. Whispered teachings stayed soft. As you listen now, imagine those whispers blending with the sound of leaves brushing against one another. No single voice stands out. Meaning is shared, diffused, gentle. In this Druids documentary, mystery is not something to solve, it is something to rest inside. The forest floor supports you without asking anything in return. Roots twist beneath the soil, unseen but dependable. This ancient history does not demand attention, it rewards surrender. As your thoughts slow, notice how the boundary between listening and breathing dissolves. You are not observing the forest anymore, you are part of its rhythm. The Druids believed this was the only state from which true understanding could emerge. But understanding is not required tonight, only rest is. And so the ritual continues, quietly, endlessly, until awareness itself becomes as soft as the moss beneath your feet. Eventually, even the idea of ritual begins to soften. The Druids understood that repetition was not meant to lead somewhere. It was meant to hold you where you already were. In this final movement of Celtic history, the forest no longer feels like a setting. It becomes a presence. Leaves continue to whisper overhead, not forming words, not delivering messages, simply existing as sound. This mythology sleep story allows that sound to replace thought. The Druids believed that when the mind stops reaching outward, it begins to settle inward, like mist sinking back into the valley at night. In history to fall asleep to, this inward settling is the goal, not knowledge. There are no final lessons here, only familiarity. Stones arranged long ago remain in place, not because they were fixed, but because no one needed to move them. Paths are visible not through markers, but through memory, through feet that have walked them so many times that the ground remembers. Celtic history at this stage feels less like the past and more like a recurring dream. The Druids never sought to separate themselves from the forest. They believed boundaries were illusions created by attention. When attention rests, boundaries fade. In this Druids documentary, the forest accepts you without ceremony. It does not ask who you are or why you are here. It does not require belief. It simply allows you to remain. The whispering tone continues, gentle and unbroken, like breathing that no longer needs guidance. The cycles you noticed earlier blend together now. Dawn and dusk overlap. Seasons lose their edges. Even names lose importance. Oak is no longer oak, it is shade. Moss is no longer moss, it is softness. In ancient history, the Druids trusted this loss of distinction. They believed that clarity emerged not from definition, but from rest. As you stay here, notice how curiosity dissolves without effort. There is nothing left to uncover. The mystery has become safe enough to disappear. This is the quiet power of a mythology sleep story told without urgency. The forest holds sound the way the earth holds warmth, slowly releasing it when needed. In this history to fall asleep to, the last remaining thoughts slow to match that release. Breath becomes shallow, then deep, then barely noticeable. The Druids taught that sleep was not an escape but a return to rhythms older than memory. In this final moment, the forest no longer whispers because there is nothing left to say. Silence does not arrive suddenly, it spreads gradually, like evening across the trees. And within that spreading calm, awareness loosens its grip. The story does not end, it simply fades into the background, where it can continue without being watched.
In the year 774, the sky changed, and no one heard a sound. There were no alarms, no sudden darkness, no immediate record written by human hands. Instead, the story waited quietly, stored in places that do not speak quickly, inside trees, inside ice, inside atoms. This is a calm history, told not by witnesses, but by measurements. In space history, events do not always announce themselves. Sometimes they leave behind only small adjustments, subtle shifts in invisible numbers. The cosmic event of 774 AD belongs to this category of scientific boredom, where curiosity is gentle and consequences are delayed. Centuries passed before anyone noticed. When scientists finally did, it was not through telescopes or chronicles, but through the patient reading of tree rings. Each ring marked a year, growing outward slowly, evenly, recording climate without interpretation. Then, suddenly, one ring showed an unexpected increase in carbon-14. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just slightly higher than normal. In space for sleep, this is where attention softens. Carbon-14 is a radioactive isotope formed when cosmic rays interact with nitrogen in the atmosphere. Usually, its levels change gradually, but in 774 AD, they changed noticeably and quietly. No explosions, no visible light show recorded across continents, just data. Calm history is made of such moments. Scientists later compared trees from different regions and found the same signal, consistent and global. The increase appeared simultaneously, suggesting a cosmic source, perhaps a solar storm, perhaps a distant cosmic event. The uncertainty remains, and that uncertainty is soothing. Low-stakes curiosity means there is no urgency to decide. The numbers exist whether we name them or not. In space history, time stretches. The event lasted only briefly, but its signature remained for over 1,000 years, waiting to be read. Ice cores from polar regions confirmed similar anomalies, layers compressed year by year, trapping tiny bubbles of ancient atmosphere. These bubbles did not react, they simply stayed. This science for sleep does not demand excitement,
it rewards patience. Researchers calculated energy levels, modeled particle flows, adjusted margins of error. All of it happened slowly, decades after the discovery, with no need for conclusion. The cosmic event 774 AD became a reference point, not a story with a beginning and end. Calm history unfolds like this: observation, measurement, quiet comparison, then rest. Even the possibility of danger remained abstract. Life on Earth continued uninterrupted. Crops grew, buildings stood, people slept. The cosmos did something subtle, and the planet absorbed it without complaint. In scientific boredom, that resilience is comforting. Nothing required reaction. Nothing needed memory. The universe adjusted something small and then moved on. As you listen, let the idea settle that not all cosmic events are loud. Some are gentle corrections, slight recalibrations in background radiation. The sky changed in 774, but only the trees noticed, and they did not react. They just kept growing, one ring at a time.
After the anomaly was noticed, nothing dramatic followed. This is important. In calm history, the most significant moments are often those that do not provoke immediate reaction. Scientists did not rush to conclusions about the cosmic event of 774 AD. Instead, they began a long process of confirmation, verification, and comparison. This is science for sleep at its most effective. Data was gathered slowly, across years, across continents. Tree samples from Japan, Europe, North America all showed the same subtle increase in carbon-14, aligned to the same calendar year. The signal was small, but consistent. In space history, consistency matters more than intensity. Researchers examined ice cores next, drilling down through layers that represented snowfall accumulated year by year. Each layer was thin, compacted, orderly. Measurements of beryllium-10, another cosmogenic isotope, showed similar increases. Again, no urgency, just agreement. Calm history unfolds through agreement rather than revelation. Models were created to estimate the energy required to produce such isotopic changes. The numbers were adjusted, recalculated, refined. Some models suggested a large solar proton event. Others allowed for a nearby cosmic phenomenon. None of these explanations demanded resolution. Low-stakes curiosity means the question can remain open. The universe does not mind. In this science for sleep narrative, uncertainty is not a problem to solve, it is a condition to rest within. The event itself may have lasted only hours or days, but the analysis stretched across decades. Papers were written, reviewed, revised. Margins of error were discussed at length, charts were compared. The rhythm was slow, methodical, repetitive. Cosmic event 774 AD became less an event and more a reference value, a calibration point used to test methods. In calm history, this is how importance fades into usefulness. The focus shifted from what happened to how we know it happened. Measurement techniques improved, calibration curves were adjusted, radiocarbon dating gained a new anchor point. All of this occurred quietly, without public alarm. Outside laboratories, life continued normally. Nights were dark, days were bright. No one noticed the isotopes settling into trees and ice. This separation between cosmic scale and human experience is soothing. Space history reminds us that not everything that matters is felt. Some things matter only to instruments, and instruments, unlike people, do not worry. As you listen, imagine the slow ticking of laboratory clocks, not marking urgency, but duration. Hours pass, data accumulates, nothing requires action.
The cosmic event of 774 AD does not ask to be remembered emotionally, it asks only to be measured accurately, and once measured, it rests. Eventually, even the measurements begin to lose their sharp edges. The cosmic event of 774 AD settles into the background of space history, no longer demanding attention, no longer inviting interpretation. In calm history, this is the natural conclusion. Once data has been collected, compared, and placed within acceptable ranges, it rests. Numbers do not ask to be revisited endlessly. Carbon-14 levels return to their usual gradual rhythm. Beryllium-10 concentrations stabilize. Calibration curves smooth out. The universe resumes its quiet maintenance. In Science for Sleep, this return to baseline is the most soothing moment. Nothing continues to rise. Nothing continues to fall. The anomaly dissolves into normal variation. Researchers reference the event occasionally, not with excitement, but with familiarity. It becomes a footnote, a marker, a line in a table. Low-stakes curiosity fades because there is nothing left to resolve. The models remain open, but they no longer press forward. Time absorbs the question. The cosmic event 774 AD becomes part of the background radiation of knowledge itself. In space history, background matters more than spectacle. The cosmos produces countless events, most of them unnoticed, most of them irrelevant to daily life. This one left a faint signature and then allowed the world to continue unchanged. Trees kept growing. Ice kept forming. Human sleep remained undisturbed. Calm history reminds us that even when the universe acts, it often does so gently. As you listen, imagine the slow decay of isotopes, each half-life unfolding silently, without urgency. Decay is not destruction here, it is balance. Energy disperses, particles settle, equations close themselves. In Science for Sleep, closure does not feel final, it feels sufficient. There is no need for dramatic endings. The data has done its work. Instruments are turned off. Laboratories dim their lights. The questions remain filed, labeled, and rarely opened. Space history continues far beyond this moment, but this particular event no longer moves. It rests exactly where it belongs, between certainty and irrelevance. And that is enough. As attention drifts, notice how even curiosity grows tired. There is comfort in knowing that not every mystery needs resolution. The universe allows unfinished understanding. It allows quiet acceptance. In the end, the cosmic event of 774 AD teaches nothing urgent. It simply demonstrates that change can occur without disruption, that impact can exist without noise. And in this realization, the mind finds permission to stop tracking, stop measuring, stop holding. The sky changed once, very slightly. Then it returned to silence. And silence, as always, continues. Darkness comes first, not suddenly, but gradually, as daylight narrows behind you and the air grows cooler, heavier, quieter. Imagine descending 100 meters beneath the surface, step by careful step, into the forgotten mines of Wales. There is no horizon here, no wind, only enclosed space and the slow, steady rhythm of sound. In industrial history, these mines were never meant to be seen, only worked. Life underground unfolded in repetition, and repetition is what makes this place perfect for dark screen sleep. Listen closely now. Somewhere ahead, water drips from stone to stone, evenly, patiently, like a clock that has forgotten the hour. This is Wales' history, not told through battles or kings, but through endurance. The walls are damp, permanently so. Moisture seeps into every surface, softening edges, dulling sharpness, absorbing sound. Light is minimal, often no more than a small flame or lamp, barely strong enough to reveal the texture of rock directly in front of you. Everything beyond that dissolves into shadow. In this space, time behaves differently. Hours feel similar to one another. Days blend together. In this history to fall asleep to, miners did not measure their work by progress, but by rhythm. Hammer strikes echoed through tunnels at a steady pace, not fast, not slow, repeating until the sound itself became background. Tap, pause, tap, pause. The stone responded with the same tone each time, neither welcoming nor resisting. This is industrial history stripped of motion, reduced to sound and sensation. Breathing becomes audible here. In the enclosed dark, even small movements carry weight. Footsteps are careful. Tools are placed gently. Voices, when used at all, are low, brief, practical. Silence dominates, and in that silence, the mind has little to hold on to. This is why the forgotten mines of Wales feel so timeless. They do not invite imagination outward, they pull attention inward. Dripping water continues, never stopping, never accelerating. The repetition is soothing. In rain sounds for sleep, we often imagine water falling from the sky, but here it falls from stone, drop by drop, unchanged for centuries. Life underground was physically demanding, but mentally numbing in a way that created its own form of calm. The darkness removed distraction. The narrow passages removed choice. Work became automatic. In calm history, automation of thought is rest. The miners learned the tunnels by memory, by touch, by echo. They did not need to see far ahead. They only needed to know the next step, the next sound, the next pause. Industrial history here is not about production numbers. It is about containment. Sound contained by rock, light contained by distance, time contained by repetition. As you descend deeper in your mind, notice how the surface world fades entirely. There is no weather, no sky, only stone, water, and the steady pattern of work. Dark screen sleep thrives in places like this, where nothing changes quickly enough to demand attention. The mine holds you gently, not as a threat, but as an enclosure. The dripping continues, the echo softens, and the deeper you go, the quieter your thoughts become. Once the descent was complete, nothing about the mine felt new anymore. That was the point. In the forgotten mines of Wales, routine replaced awareness. Every day underground felt remarkably similar to the one before it, and that sameness created a quiet mental shelter. In industrial history, repetition was not a flaw, it was a requirement. The body learned movements without thought. Lift the tool, strike the stone, pause, listen. The sound returned in the same way each time, softened by damp walls and narrow corridors. Tap, echo, drip. These sounds layered together into a constant, predictable environment, ideal for dark screen sleep. Time passed without markers. There were no windows, no shadows moving across walls. Only the steady rhythm of labor and the persistent presence of moisture. Water pooled in shallow depressions, reflecting dim light without sparkle. Occasionally, droplets fell from the ceiling, landing with the same gentle sound, over and over again. In rain sounds for sleep, repetition soothes because it removes anticipation. Underground, anticipation simply did not exist. In Wales history, miners often worked by memory and habit rather than by sight. Familiar tunnels guided them forward. The texture of stone beneath their hands confirmed where they were. Even the air felt consistent, cool and heavy, carrying the faint mineral scent of earth. Breathing adjusted naturally, slower, deeper, matching the limited space. This environment narrowed attention until only immediate sensations remained. In calm history, this narrowing is rest. There were breaks, but they were quiet. Food was eaten without conversation, movements small and efficient. Voices echoed too much to encourage speech. Silence returned quickly after any sound. The mind preferred quiet. Over time, thoughts learned to follow the same pattern as the work: simple, repetitive, unchanging. Industrial history often focuses on output and exhaustion, but here the mental experience matters more. The monotony dulled anxiety. With no variety, the mind stopped searching for it. Dark screen sleep thrives on this absence of stimulation. Even fatigue became gentle. Muscles moved automatically, conserving energy through familiarity. The drip of water never hurried. It never slowed. It marked nothing. In Wales history, this constancy became a form of comfort. Above ground, weather shifted and seasons changed. Below ground, everything remained the same. That sameness insulated the miners from the outside world. In this history to fall asleep to, insulation is safety. The stone walls absorbed not only sound, but thought. Concerns that existed on the surface lost relevance underground. There was no future to plan for here, only the next movement, the next sound, the next pause. As you listen, imagine the mind adapting to this pattern, releasing anything unnecessary. The mind does not reward alertness, it rewards steadiness. Repetition becomes reassurance. Darkness becomes familiar. And slowly, awareness softens until it blends into the background hum of water, stone, and breath.
Eventually, even the rhythm fades, not because it stops, but because it no longer needs attention. In the deepest sections of the forgotten mines of Wales, sound becomes constant enough to disappear. The dripping water continues exactly as before, but the mind no longer counts it. Hammer strikes have ended for the day, leaving behind a low residual echo that settles into the stone. In industrial history, this is the moment when labor dissolves into rest, not by leaving the mine, but by becoming part of it. Darkness is complete now. Lamps are dimmed or extinguished. The space feels smaller, safer, enclosed on all sides by rock that has not moved in millions of years. In Wales history, this depth represented both danger and shelter, but at rest, only shelter remains. The walls hold their temperature. The air stays cool and predictable. Nothing surprises you here.
In dark screen sleep, predictability is comfort. Water continues to drip, drop after drop, unchanged. It no longer signals time passing, it signals stability. In rain sounds for sleep, repetition often fades into white noise. In underground, this effect is absolute. The mind absorbs every sharp edge. Thoughts slow until they lose shape. There is no need to imagine the surface world anymore. It feels distant and irrelevant. Industrial history often remembers effort, but forgets stillness. Here, stillness is everything. The body rests against stone. Breathing aligns with the narrow space, shallow but calm. Muscles relax because there is nowhere else to go, no direction, no choice. This containment removes responsibility. In calm history, responsibility is what keeps the mind awake. Underground, responsibility dissolves. The mind does not ask you to plan, decide, or remember. It simply holds you. Sound reduces further, not by absence, but by familiarity. The drip becomes part of silence. Silence becomes textured, padded by moisture and earth. This is why enclosed spaces can feel unexpectedly soothing. They remove excess. In the forgotten mines of Wales, excess was never allowed to exist. Tools were minimal, light was minimal, movement was minimal, and now thought follows the same rule. In this history to fall asleep to, nothing urges continuation. There is no next task, no signal to resume, only the slow persistence of stone and water. The mind recognizes this environment as ancient and reliable. It lets go. As awareness softens, the boundary between sound and silence disappears completely. What remains is a deep, even quiet, like being underwater without motion. The mind no longer feels underground, it feels internal, a space behind the eyes, dark, cool, and undisturbed. In this final moment, industrial history becomes background texture, Wales history becomes atmosphere, and the mind becomes a cradle. The water still drips, the rock still holds, but you no longer need to listen. Sleep arrives without transition, as naturally as darkness underground. Night in ancient Athens could be surprisingly cold. Stone walls held little warmth once the sun disappeared, and the air drifting in from narrow streets carried a chill that lingered. Yet this is where ancient Greece daily life becomes quietly relatable. Long before modern insulation or central heating, people still found ways to sleep comfortably, to rest deeply, to feel safe enough to close their eyes. In history of sleep, comfort has never required perfection, only familiarity. As darkness settled over the city, households gathered inward. The day retreated from public spaces into small rooms built around courtyards where warmth could be shared and preserved. The hearth became the center of the home, not dramatic, not decorative, simply functional. Clay braziers glowed softly, radiating heat slowly and steadily. This was not a roaring fire, it was a controlled warmth, meant to last through the night without demanding attention. In bedtime story history, these quiet details matter more than grand events. People arranged their sleeping spaces close enough to feel the residual heat, but far enough to remain safe. Stone floors were covered with simple mats. Wooden platforms lifted bodies slightly from the cold ground. Woolen blankets, thick and coarse, were layered carefully, trapping warmth rather than creating luxury. In ancient Greece daily life, sleep was practical. The goal was not indulgence, but balance. Bodies adjusted, breathing slowed. The house itself participated in rest, walls absorbing heat during the evening and releasing it gradually through the night. In history of sleep, this gradual release is deeply comforting. Nothing changes suddenly. Temperature shifts are gentle, sounds soften. Outside, the city quiets. Inside, small movements continue, a pot settling, embers shifting, fabric rustling lightly. These sounds signal safety. They tell the sleeper that the environment remains stable. In bedtime story history, stability is the final ingredient before sleep arrives. People slept clothed, not because of discomfort, but because warmth was layered. Tunics remained on, cloaks doubled as blankets. The boundary between waking and sleeping was thin. There was no sharp transition. Evening simply softened into night. In this way, ancient Greece daily life mirrors the way sleep approaches you now, slowly, without demand, without ceremony. The cold existed, but it was managed. It was acknowledged and gently pushed away by proximity, routine, and shared warmth. In history of sleep, this acceptance of conditions rather than resistance to them allowed rest to come easily. As you listen, imagine lying near that hearth, feeling heat on one side and cool air on the other, balanced perfectly between comfort and awareness. The mind does not need to stay alert. The body already knows what to do. Sleep here is not an escape, it is a continuation. As the night deepens, the ancient Greek home changes character. Movement slows, voices fade, and the structure itself seems to relax. In ancient Greece daily life, nighttime was not a separate event. It was simply the continuation of evening, softened further. The hearth burns lower now, embers glowing rather than flames rising. This gentle heat spreads slowly, evenly, warming stone and clay without urgency. In history of sleep, warmth that arrives gradually is the easiest to accept. Families arrange themselves for rest with quiet familiarity. Bedding is prepared without ceremony. Wool is shaken lightly, then laid down. Mats are adjusted. Bodies find positions that feel known, practiced over many nights. In bedtime story history, repetition is what turns space into refuge. The house responds. Thick walls block wind. Courtyards trap air. Doors are closed not to shut the world out, but to keep comfort in. Outside, the city of Athens grows still. Footsteps disappear. Distant sounds soften until they barely register. Inside, the small sounds remain, comforting in their predictability. A piece of wood settles near the hearth. Ash shifts. Fabric brushes against stone. These sounds do not interrupt sleep, they guide it. In ancient Greece daily life, sleep often came in layers. Light rest at first, then deeper stillness as the night progressed. There was no pressure to fall asleep quickly. Rest was allowed to arrive when it was ready. In history of sleep, this lack of urgency matters. Without clocks, without schedules enforced by alarms, the body followed its own rhythm. Breath slowed naturally. Muscles released tension accumulated during the day. The mind, no longer stimulated by light or activity, turned inward. Thoughts became fewer, then softer. The home supported this transition. Its design favored inward focus. Small rooms created intimacy. Low ceilings held warmth close. Stone absorbed the day's heat and returned it slowly. In bedtime story history, architecture itself becomes a companion to sleep. People shared sleeping spaces, not from necessity alone, but from comfort. Shared warmth mattered. Presence mattered. Knowing someone else breathed nearby reassured the mind. In ancient Greece daily life, this closeness reduced fear of the night. Darkness was familiar, not threatening. Shadows remained where they always were. Nothing unexpected moved. As you listen, imagine lying within that space, surrounded by quiet signs of life that do not demand response. The fire no longer needs tending. The night has settled. Sleep does not arrive all at once. It arrives gently, like warmth spreading through wool, until the body no longer distinguishes between rest and stillness. As the night reaches its quietest point, the ancient Greek home no longer feels like a place where sleep happens. It feels like sleep itself. In ancient Greece daily life, the boundary between environment and body softened completely at this hour. The hearth's warmth has spread evenly through the room, no longer noticeable as heat, only as absence of cold. This is the moment described so gently in the history of sleep, when comfort stops being something you feel and becomes something you trust. Woolen blankets hold warmth without weight. Stone walls stand steady, unchanged, offering protection without movement. The air is calm, neither warm nor cold, simply present. In bedtime story history, this balance is where rest settles deepest. Breathing becomes slow and regular, matching the quiet rhythm of the house. No one listens for danger. No one waits for interruption. The night is known. It has happened this way countless times before. In ancient Greece daily life, familiarity replaced fear. The mind recognizes patterns and releases control. Thoughts do not disappear suddenly. They thin like smoke drifting upward from the hearth, fading without effort. The body remains still because it wants to, not because it must. In the history of sleep, this willingness is the final signal. Outside, the city remains silent. Inside, the house holds its shape. Nothing changes quickly enough to matter. Even time seems to pause, stretched gently between breaths. In bedtime story history, sleep is not a destination. It is a gradual settling, like dust returning to the floor. People slept knowing they would wake with the sun, but that knowledge did not disturb rest. There was no urgency, no anticipation, only the quiet certainty of routine. Ancient Greece daily life was built around this trust in cycles. Night followed day, warmth followed cold, sleep followed effort, and always the transition was gentle. As you lie here now, imagine sharing that trust. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to remember. The conditions for rest have already been met. The body knows how to sleep the way it always has, long before modern comforts, long before explanation. In the history of sleep, this knowledge is older than words. It lives in breath, in warmth, in stillness. The house no longer needs to hold you. The warmth no longer needs to reach you. Everything has arrived. Sleep does not announce itself. It simply continues, quietly, until awareness softens and fades, just as it has for centuries, night after night, without effort.